Hello, welcome back to the Granulator on the Disting EX. In the first video I talked about mainly using this as a live audio processor. In this video we're going to talk about more using it as an instrument. I'm going to be playing it mostly from this MIDI keyboard, but as I said before, you can play it through CV Gate, and in fact I do have this Rene hooked up which I'll be activating at some point later. So it can, of course, play using grains from the audio buffer that you recorded, as in the first video, but you can also load samples off the SD card. So I'm going to do that now, just for variation. So it's the Granulator menu. Under this menu you've got load, you've got save, so that will save the current buffer that you've recorded back to the SD card. And it's got view saved path, so that's the path on the SD card of the sample, which it will reload if you save a preset and then load the preset again. It will load the sample for you. Clear buffer clears out the audio buffer. If you've recorded or loaded something previously, it just wipes it. And then some options which are documented in the manual. But for now we're going to do load, so we're going to go load WAV. There are two options, load WAV and load WAV raw. Raw basically just forgets about sample rates and loads raw samples into the buffer. Load WAV worries about the sample rate of the file you're loading and corrects it if necessary to match the sample rate that the algorithm runs at. So we'll use that, and then we'll browse to the file we want, which happens to be this one. So there we go, it's read the file. There it is in our buffer, and now we can play it. And now we can, of course, still use drones, because it's all just the same algorithm, and all the grain parameters we explored in the first video apply, or the rate and the size and the pitch, and they still apply when you're playing it as an instrument. So you can possibly, in fact, why don't I just turn a drone on and let's see if we can guess what this sample is. We maybe make it slightly less random. And so on. There we've got the moo. And let's change the envelope a little bit, and let's not use opacity, let's use level, and then we'll, there we go, a moo thing. And of course it's polyphonic, 8 voice polyphonic over MIDI, 3 CV Gate inputs if you want them. So that's all jolly good fun. This is also a good time to talk about the LFO, which we didn't talk about in the first video, which are these parameters here. Depth is in terms of the buffer size, and so we'll just put that up. Now the LFO speed is calibrated in an unusual way for an LFO, in terms, it's not in terms of hertz or whatever like an LFO speed might be. It's in terms of what would correspond to normal playback speed of the sample. So 196 happens to be the magic value that means it plays at 1 times feed. So if I press a key, then it's LFOing through the sample at the right speed. If I don't want quite so much, so if we change the LFO speed now, make it faster or slower, and the polarity, that's, if you have it negative then it starts playing forwards and then goes backwards. If you have it the other way, it's the opposite. So start the sample backwards first and then forwards. So that's an alternative to sending in an LFO CV like we did before, which we can of course still do. So if we turn off the LFO and then get a CV from elsewhere, that's a sine wave LFO, so it kind of has a slightly non-linear speed up and slow down. Change the LFO speed. So there we go, that's with an LFO. So other things that come into play when you're playing it with it as an instrument, not just as drones, are these controls here which link velocity and pitch to different things. So the envelope ones we already explored. Velocity to level controls how much the MIDI velocity or CV velocity affects the volume of the sample. So by default it's mapped to 100%. So if I play softly, it's quiet. If I play hard, it's louder. So that's fairly easy to understand. The velocity to delay parameter lets the velocity control the delay. That's the buffer position, which you might want to do instead of, or possibly as well have. Let's turn velocity to level off, and velocity delay will turn up a little bit. Again, this is in percentage of the buffer size. So if I play softly, I'll get that. If I play harder, it moves. So let's have even more, in fact, and move it. So just playing the same note with different velocities is giving me different sounds. So great for playing or sequencing, and particularly that gives you a nice way to have things cycling over some different sounds as you play through. Now in a similar vein, we've got pitch to pitch and pitch to delay. So pitch to pitch, how much the pitch of the note affects the actual pitch of the grain. So normally that's 100%, so it goes up. If you want to use pitch to control something else, for example, so if you're happy with the pitch you've got going, or if you're using it in real time and you just want to have the pitch coming straight back as the audio goes in, you could turn pitch to 0. So not minus 100, well you could put it to minus 100, but you could put it to 0. And then pitch to delay, now your pitch is controlling the buffer position. So let's say, as I go up, I'm working through the buffer. So again, if you had it sequencing, in fact, why don't we do that now? Let's get the René going. So let's put things back to normal and get René going here. There we go. So we've got a sequence which is normally playing pitch, but if we put the pitch to pitch to 0, and then put pitch to delay up a little bit, then our sequence is sequencing the buffer position rather than the pitch, which could be pretty useful. So let's stop that again. Put things back to normal. So other things useful when you're playing, bend range is the pitch bend range. So here's my pitch things on this little keyboard. So that's a tone. If I change the bend range to 12 semitones, I get 12. So that's as you'd expect. And then sustain mode is exactly the same as the sustain mode in the polywave table and SD multi-sample modes. It's whether things re-trigger when you press the same note as it's sustained. So sustain works as you'd expect. And whether you want things to re-trigger or not is that mode there exactly, and there's the other algorithms. So that's all for now for playing grains from the keyboard. Next video I'll talk about crossfade looping instead.